guys, it's Jordan and welcome back to my channel. Today we are going to do my January reading wrap-up. And actually this year I'm thinking of doing something a little bit different with my wrap-up. So if you like this idea or this format, please let me know in the comments down below. I really want to incorporate TV and movies more into my channel. I tried to do this more last year and the ways in which I tried to do it didn't succeed very well. So I'm trying a different approach to it within my monthly wrap-ups and TBRs. And let's just go ahead and get on into the books. The first book I read this year was The Fixer by Jennifer Lynn Barnes. This is the first book in her Scandal meets Veronica Mars meets Criminal Minds duology. Basically, we have this young girl who grew up in Montana under the care of her grandfather, and her sister moved away like right out of high school to DC and has had a very successful career as a fixer. She is paid by wealthy DC politicians, make their problems go away. And as our main character Tessa's grandfather is diagnosed with an illness, her older sister Ivy is forced to move her from her hometown in Montana to DC and enroll her in a very prestigious private school that has nothing but political children in it. Being that her sister is so well known and honestly quite hated, Tess has a very rough time at school. One day, this conspiracy starts to circulate around Tessa's school that makes her life all the more interesting. Secrets come to light, relationships are revealed, and Tess is thrust into the middle of this very dangerous game played by very dangerous people. It was just the right balance to where you felt like a detective and like you were sorting through these clues and piecing things together on your own, but then also enough to surprise you to where it wasn't a completely predictable, boring book. The main plot twist at the end of the novel I found very predictable and I called very early on. So if you don't like predictable plot twists, just keep that in mind going into this book. However, also keep in mind that there are about 20 of them, so if you get one right, there is a chance that you won't get another one right. So because it's DC and everyone knows everyone, it creates a very tangled web of messy lies, and I cannot wait to continue with this duology and read The Long Game. I end up giving The Fixer by Jennifer Lynn Barnes a 4 out of 5 stars. Next, I picked up Frozen Ties by Morgan Rhodes, which is the 4th book in the Fallen Kingdom series. This is my favorite of the books so far. I think we get the most from the characters and the most from the story in this book. Something though that I would really have liked to see is more of Magnus and Cleo's point of view. They're, in my opinion, the most interesting characters and less of the other ones. In this book, we get a ton of point of views, like maybe 7. Some of them I just didn't care for because I don't like the characters and their storylines weren't that interesting. This was the first novel that I was also actually invested in Lucia's storyline. I really don't like Lucia. I think she's the most whiny and irresponsible of the 4 main characters, and she's very mature. She came into her own the most so far in this book. I hope that she has a continued progression of maturity in the next book and we don't go backwards, because I feel like the series has a really good job of taking 2 steps forward, 20 steps back. She does have some consequences in this book as a result of her actions in the previous book, so I'm interested to see how that's going to play out. Also, something that I didn't like is I felt like there was a character introduced into this book purely for drama. It's a character that did not need to be there whatsoever. She could have had him be anything else, anybody else, and he would have served perfectly fine purpose. Because of who she made him and because of his ties and his relationships with other characters, he has the potential to set back this storyline immensely, and I'm just really annoyed that she did that. I feel like it's a cheap way of continuing this 4-book drama saga, and I ended up giving Frozen Tides a 4 out of 5 stars. After that, I picked up Truthwitch by Susan Dennard, and I absolutely adored this book. This book follows 2 best friends who are thread sisters, kind of like a parabatai relationship. And one of them, Safia, is a truth witch, meaning that she can discern when someone is lying or telling the truth. And this is a very valuable ability to have. It's very rare to be a truth witch, and she hides her skill to keep herself safe. And Iseult, our other main character, is a thread witch. So she has the ability to see different bonds between other characters, and she's able to kind of see people's emotions as well. And these 2 best friends are low-life criminals, more or less. They're not Taz Brecker status from Six of Crows. Like, they're not good at being criminals. They are like the bottom of the barrel, not the best at stealing, but they still try their best. I give them credit. At the time when this book is set is a couple months from the end of this 20-year truce. The countries are coming to the end of this truce and getting ready to start war again, and our two main characters get caught up in the middle of that war. This is what I wanted when I started Fallen Kingdoms. What I wanted from Fallen Kingdoms was given to me in this. Like, Fallen Kingdoms fell a little short for me, but this is what I wanted. This is what I was searching for, and I absolutely loved it. The only thing that I did not like about this book is the beginning. Even 25% of the way into the book, I had no idea what the hell was going on. And it's because Susan Dennard literally throws you into the story. It's like a baby antelope being thrown to the lions and left to just flounder and figure it out for themselves. That's how you feel. Lots of foreign terms and countries and places being dropped. But somewhere between page 140 and 240, I fell in love. Like, die hard, head over heels, in love with this book. I absolutely loved the relationships between the various characters. Merrick is a new book boyfriend. I'm so in love with Merrick, but I'm also rooting really hard for Aedwan and Azult's relationship as well. They have a very interesting relationship, and I can't wait to see how that's explored more in the next book. I'm very excited to see where the story goes, and I end up giving Truthwitch by Susan Dennard a 4.5 out of 5 stars. In my heart, it's 5 stars though. And the last book I read in January was Wayfarer by Alexandra Bracken. It's the second book and the final book in the Passenger duology. Disliked this book immensely. To be honest, wish I would have DNF'd this book. I just filmed an entire series review. I'm not going to get too much into my thoughts. Basically, I think that this book could have been about half the length that it is. I'm not a huge fan of Alexandra Bracken's writing. It's very oversaturated with a lot of unnecessary information, almost like inner struggles, inner thoughts, inner dialogue of the characters, convolutes the entire plot to the point where I didn't even know really what the core plot of the second book was. The things that I liked about the first book, I felt fell very flat in this book. Ultimately, I would find myself dozing off, becoming distracted, not really reading or ingesting any of the information. The ending of the book didn't even save the book for me. In the end, I gave Wayfarer a 2 out of 5 stars. I did also read Pathfinder by Alexandra Bracken. This is a short story that comes in the Target edition of Wayfarer, and this follows Rhodes in 1918 New York City. It kind of shows you what her relationship was like with Henry and how their dynamic was so vastly different from Etta and Nicholas's dynamic, and I actually enjoyed this a lot more than Passenger and Wayfarer. I would have liked to see their story told over Etta and Nicholas's. I think their relationship is more interesting. Rose is a very morally gray character. I think she's more interesting than Etta. Unfortunately, it's only 30 pages, but I really did enjoy this and thought it was a good novella, but at the same time, it made me wish that it was an actual book. It is not necessary whatsoever to understand the events of Wayfarer or Passenger, and I gave Pathfinder 3 out of 5 stars. And for every book that I read, I do write a pretty lengthy review for it on Goodreads, so if you ever want to hear more about my thoughts for any particular book and I don't give you enough information in my wrap-ups, you can always check my Goodreads account. You might notice that we are at a slightly different angle. The sun was starting to stream in, so I had to scoot us over a little bit more, and I'm now filming on my phone because my camera died. This is the part of the wrap-up that's going to be a little bit different than in the past. And so now we're going to move into the movies section. So I did not see any movies that were new to me this month, but in this section in future wrap-ups, I would like to include my thoughts on whatever movies I had seen that month. I found that doing ones every 4 months was too far after the movie had been released, and so people couldn't go see those movies in the theater anymore because most of them were gone at that point. So now we're moving into the TV section. This month, I finally finished my rewatch of Gilmore Girls. I watched it when it was airing from 2000 to 2007, so I haven't seen it in about a decade, and I absolutely loved it. I finished the 7th season this month. A lot of the times as TV shows progress into their later seasons, they don't tend to be as enjoyable. The storylines start to feel kind of stretched out. It starts to feel redundant. Gilmore Girls is one of those shows where I never feel like there's a lull or a bad point of the series. Nothing feels contrived or redundant. It's just a simple story of two women's lives. My OTP is Luke and Lorelai. I'm also a really huge fan of Christopher and Lorelai, and they have a relationship, like an actual relationship in season 7, and I really liked seeing that again. I remember being really unfulfilled with the ending of the series. Watching it again, I wasn't as sad this time around because I knew that I had A Year in the Life to watch afterward, and I definitely think A Year in the Life is the perfect finale for Gilmore Girls. So with that being said, let's talk about Gilmore Girls A Year in the Life, because I also watched this month. I loved this revival so much. I feel like the actors did a really good job of stepping back into those roles that they haven't been in almost a decade, and it just felt really natural and seamless. Being someone who literally finished season 7 and then started A Year in the Life, I didn't feel a huge disconnect. I didn't feel like these characters were trying too hard to be something that they weren't. It had so many of the same jokes. A lot of the things that Gilmore Girls is known for was still present. I just think that they kept the spirit of the show alive really, really well. My favorite episode was obviously Fall, because like I said, Luke and Lorelai are my babies. My least favorite was probably Summer, because that musical went on for way too long. Like, when you only have 6 hours of precious film time, every minute counts. I loved seeing where they all were in the future, and I just thought it was a great little glimpse into who they are now and what they're probably doing with their lives. And with that being said, I really liked the ending. I thought it was the perfect full circle to this series. And while we didn't see that journey that will proceed, I'm glad to know that it's going to happen, because it just felt really natural. And I read that Amy Sherman Palladino had always intended that character to have that path in life, and that it was how she had seen the original series end. I would love to see more, obviously, like a season 2, but I feel like it would just be too much like Gilmore Girls, because we already have seen that story. I just feel like at that point that the story would become overused. I don't need to have any more. I felt very satisfied with that ending. So that's everything that I read and watched in the month of January. Please let me know if this is something that you guys like, or if you want to see just the traditional wrap-up video at the end of the month. I would love to know in the comments down below. Feedback is helpful. Thank you guys so much for watching. Until next time, I'll talk to you very soon. Bye!